fighter jets were scrambled to shoot down all three objects. The first in Alaska on Friday, landing on dangerous ice. An object was then taken down over the Yukon on Saturday. The search area near Dawson City covers. And we now know the third was shot down over Lake Huron on Sunday.
You know, it seems like this should have been a much bigger deal, apart from a few days of News-Nothing coverage. Seems to have fallen by the wayside.
Chinese fighter jet J-16 on Friday intercepted a U.S. spy plane.
This is footage of the Chinese military engaging in dangerous maneuvers in 2023. Sometimes footage like this can be released by the U.S. military within hours of the incident occurring. So why not NORAD's 2023 shootdowns, in particular, the object around the Arctic Circle? Investigative reporter Ross Coulthart has suggestions as to what might have gone on.
The information I have is that two of the objects were indeed prosaic. They were just mundane objects, probably weather balloons. But there is an abundance now of sources, including a guy who literally lives at the end of the road in Alaska where this object was encountered by an F-22 jet. There was definitely a missile fired at an object which was described as looking a little bit like a giant Tic Tac, funnily enough.
If it was a Tic Tac, it would make sense, given there seems to be a much bigger, long-standing issue of cylindrical UAPs over Canada's Yukon, and two incidents 60 years apart on the same road could be linked to one of the biggest military mysteries of the 21st century. And don't forget, you gotta stay to the end to get the whole story. It was back in July of 1996 when twin sisters Sarah Baker and Sue Malcolm, renowned chefs and restaurateurs in the community of Dawson City, Yukon, they were heading home late at night. Now, because it was summertime in the north, you don't get total darkness. And it was around midnight when they'd left a gas station near the Klondike and Dempster highways for the 90-minute drive to their rural home. Now, as they were going home over the undulating hills, the tops of which allows you to see for miles, it was then they suddenly saw it, a massive cigar-shaped object suspended in the air, tilted close to a 45-degree angle, with what looked like rectangular windows along its side. Stunned, the sisters had no idea what it was, but one of them looked at her watch and was alarmed that it was already 1:50 a.m., but her watch had stopped. They were already 20 minutes late somehow, and they still had half an hour to go before they got home, one of which had their son waiting for them. They were anxious to get there. Now, after cresting another hill, they saw the object now had dozens of smaller glowing objects flying around the tip of it, going in and out. By the next hill, the smaller objects were all gone. Now, the women thought the giant object was hovering over their gold claim about 3 kilometers away, and that's when it happened. The object wasn't over their gold claim. This massive downward tilting cigar-shaped UAP suddenly began descending downwards. As the women stared at it, they began to lose sight of it as it slid behind Haystack Mountain. Whatever it was a supermassive object, and it seemed to be moving behind the mountain, downwards. Now, minutes later, they arrived home just as the object was almost completely out of view, and that's when one of their sons came out, anxious, wondering where had the women been. It was 3:30 in the morning. The sisters were 2 hours late, and they had no idea why. UFOBC did an exhaustive investigation. These are their pictures and drawings taken after they spoke to the sisters, and they stand by their story. All that being said, this wasn't the first time the area around Quartz Creek Road had strange aerial visitors. This incident was also examined by the same investigator with UFOBC who looked into the twin sisters sighting, and this allegedly took place in the same area where the women had had their encounter. According to the story, the Boudelier brothers were in an area along Hunker Road outside Dawson City, Yukon in the 1930s. And that's when they allegedly spotted a giant cigar-shaped UFO moving along the horizon. It made no sound, had no wings, and seemed to be matching the contour of the land as it was flying along. Both brothers had passed away by the time investigators looked into it, but those who heard the story for the first time in the 1950s and then onward say the brothers never changed the details, and they never tried to sell it or publicize it. While stories like the Boudelier brothers can't be verified, it's interesting the man the Canadian government used to funnel its UAP reports to shared on social media an interesting Tic Tac encounter, and you guessed it, in the Yukon. This incident, investigated by UFOBC, took place in 2003 near Whitehorse, when a large cigar-shaped UFO was seen moving just above the ground, but below the treetops. The main witness says the object looked like an airline fuselage. It had no wings or marking of any kind. It looked to be made of brushed aluminum. Now, the main witness, who was driving with her mother, had the first sighting, which lasted about 20 seconds before losing sight of it. About a minute later, she picked it up again down another street. Now, when UFOBC investigated the incident, they went to the location, and based on the findings, the object was about 2 meters off the ground and about 4 meters high. Now, the witness says she never saw how long the object was because it was always partially obstructed. It is interesting, at one point it was seen moving between 2 hydro poles, but below the wire between them. It could have been moving up to 600 kilometers an hour at one point, based on how fast it had traveled 10 kilometers. This is just a sample of a handful of incidents involving similar-shaped objects around the Yukon, which brings it back to the shootdown.
Obviously, there is some sort of pattern in there. The fact that we are seeing this in a significant degree.
That we think we're seeing more is because we're looking for more.
Christopher Mellon, a former top official with President Obama's administration, he questions why NORAD, that was established to protect against Cold War Armageddon and still consumes billions of dollars, well, it doesn't seem to find any UAPs. Mellon cites an incident that he uncovered involving an F-15 chasing a fast-moving object over the western United States. The incident was also confirmed by commercial airline pilots as well, yet the Air Force did not report it to the oversight body at the Pentagon looking into UAPs, nor to Congress. So how many other cases like this have happened? And yet there are hundreds of civilian pilot encounters all the time.
The majority of witnesses are commercial pilots at major airlines. Often, they are veterans with decades of flying experience.
This all comes with a backdrop of Commander Fravor's infamous Tic Tac encounter off the coast of California, and that revelation and the video that came with it helped spur the modern disclosure movement. Even NASA recently admitted there are endless small unknown objects overhead in our airspace, and no one knows or is admitting what they are, where they're from, or what they're for. Trillions in defense spending for no answers, including the shooting incident over the Yukon territory. Now, you don't have to believe David Grusch, who testified to Congress about UAP reverse engineering programs, UAP crash retrievals, and non-human biologics. But the Intelligence Community Inspector General found his claims to be credible and urgent. And dozens of people have already testified behind closed doors to U.S. lawmakers about UAPs as a result, and no one is allowed to share with you what is really being said. This issue is as real as it gets.
But in reality, those people who are trying to get to the bottom of this, they don't know anything. I mean, they're still asking, is that Tic Tac? Is that, from China? And of course, as soon as I saw it, I matched it to a 1967 image we have of a Lockheed Skunk Works, so-called anti-gravity device.
So that would be us.
It's us. The operations that have been building these are deep black illegal, and they are not disclosing it properly.
It's still unclear what's going on, but it looks like if you're in the mood for Tic Tacs, just head up north, because there's more than enough going around for everyone. Big thanks to UFOBC investigators who've done great work on these incidents in our quest for answers. Because there is a good chance the government already knows what's going on, because these things have always been around. It seems you don't even have to look that hard to find them. I'm Sean. Thanks for watching. If you like the content, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I've got great new material coming all the time. I really appreciate to hear what you have to say. The algorithm appreciates it as well. And leave your comments below. I want to know what you think. Have you had similar sightings or encounters? Let us know. Stay tuned. There's another great video coming up next.